Hi, so thanks very much for checking back in and getting the other part of this morning's lecture. My apologies again for the um, technical difficulties. There's just a couple of slides that I wanted to share. I start on slide 16, looking at corporate governance and the role of corporate governance and who's involved. These stakeholders particularly include the shareholders, management, and the board of directors. They are the principal stakeholders. The role, of course, of the board of directors is to keep management in line and to protect the interest of shareholders. And then there are others, these other stakeholders, which have a role. Corporate governance, excuse me, is the set of processes, the customary ways of doing business, the policies and the laws that institutions use to basically ensure accountability of individuals within the firm. And this leads and supports the conversation that we were having about the agency problem. So corporate governance, looking at the OECD principles, the primary one is the transparent and efficient markets, as well as ensuring strategic guidance of the company and protecting stakeholders. So I'm going to flip through these slides that you should take time to read. I'm going to not spend too much time talking about some of these. I do want to just point out that this is the one that I had mentioned had the timeline on it, looking, and we spent a fair amount of time talking about the urban merchant and how they handled distribution, and really were able to impact every aspect of business. They took products from the farmers and the merchants not close to the city and were able to distribute them. They handled the entire range of economic activities, including importing, exporting, wholesale retailing, insuring, and shipping. And they were quite significant in terms of the growth of the American economy and improving the standard of living within the United States. Looks at John Jacob Astor. And then we spent a fair amount of time talking about the Industrial Revolution. This is the slide I really wanted to focus on, which looks at the three aspects of it which changed work processes. The fact that there were machines now in place as a substitute for human skills, which gave way to a concentration of manufacturing, as well as small shops giving way to larger factories. We have inanimate power generated by steam engines and coal-fired steam engines that were able to then also help with the development of better and more efficient machines. These better machines, of course, required more fuel. And you can see that there's some demonstration here and some interesting work looking at clocks, as well as some pictures of the early steam engines. So looking at these process innovations, one of the things that I had mentioned in class was about Adam Smith and his commentary on the pin manufacturer and the pin maker. It really speaks to the innovations in process by having individuals engage in just a limited amount of work, that you didn't need to be specialized in making pins. And if you look at this last part here, each person therefore making a 10th part of 48,000 pins might be considered as making 4,800 pins in a day, certainly much more production. But if they had all wrought separately and independently, and without any of them having been educated to this peculiar business, they certainly could not each of them have made 20, perhaps not one pin in a day. So obviously we get increases in supply, and as I had mentioned briefly, following the Civil War, there was such a glut in supply that it drove prices down. There were legal innovations. You can see some of the other slides that are in here. We had spoken a bit about the communication and transportation revolutions, the importance, this is of canals, and then when we look further, the importance of the railroads. And the railroad industry itself is what really set the stage for management activities and inventing management. So there's several slides here from Alfred Chandler of Harvard. This looks at the processes involved, and really we can see how the growth of the American corporation with the different disciplines within the business, the fact that there are these administrative departments are a result, the management functions including the formal reporting, and then also the outgrowth of human resources management, looking at performance goals and reviews. And really this can be credited back to the railroad industry. So one of Chandler's works is called The Visible Hand, looks at the visible hand of management. We talked a great deal about this, and what I want to just draw your attention to are the 8 general propositions. There's several slides here that take a look at these. You should read them to see the evolution of management. There's a summary slide which then shows that these propositions fall into 2 parts. The first 3 explain why we developed into the modern business enterprise and why it is organized the way that it has been now. And the 5 remaining concern its growth. Once they started to grow and continue to grow, how does it maintain its own dominance and continue to feed itself? And interestingly, he identifies the end result as an oligopoly, which is, again, something we talked about briefly in class. Few competitors in a given market. So the slides continue to emphasize how the world of business has really changed as itself, but then also how it affects society. And if we look at the work by Brands, The Triumph of Capitalism is these wonderful innovations and certainly improvements in terms of quality of life, so that people were able to reap the advantages of productivity gains. They were able to choose different jobs not tethered to producing a product or service that they needed from beginning to end. They also had unprecedented freedom of movement. It also spurred interest in more general education as well as higher education. So I leave you with these thoughts. If you have any questions about any of this prior to the test, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email or correspond with me through Blackboard. Thanks very much. I appreciate your patience, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.